All right, so in today's video, we're gonna be talking about the 3 cons of working at a startup. A little bit about me. My name is Sanjay. I've been in tech sales for 4.5 years now. And for the past year and a half, I've been the founding account executive for a Series A startup based in San Francisco. So I was the first sales hire that they brought on. So everything I talk about is really from my experience, and hopefully coming out of the video, you'll have a good understanding of what it's like working at a startup, some of the drawbacks of going in early stage at a startup. Number 1, career progression and development. Now, I know in my previous video, I talked about how a startup is a great way to sharpen your skill set, learn about how to build a business, how to scale a business. And while all of that is completely true, if you're trying to grow through your career and kind of rise up through the ranks, a startup might not be the best place to go, because a lot of times it's all about surviving and it's not about necessarily getting those employees from an IC to a manager or to more senior roles. The startup I'm at, we never really had conversations around career progression. Even if I brought them up, we never had goals around like, hey, if you hit this is what the promotion will look like. Typically all the conversations, every time I brought up career, it would get shot down because we just needed to survive to the next round that we wanted to raise before we could really even have a career conversation. And I think the biggest thing for me is this always kind of has this like negative feedback loop where if you don't really start talking about career development, sometimes your manager doesn't actually start reinvesting time into actually like personal development or skill development on your core role, right? So a lot of times I'm not getting feedback in what I'm doing well, what I can improve on, what's like the most thing I should be spending most of my time on. These types of like feedback things when it comes to development, when there isn't a long-term career growth plan or strategy, not just for me, but also for my manager, it can sometimes be the situation where no one is giving feedback on how everyone is doing their job, which ultimately means that no one is really getting better at like their core job. Something I would do if you're looking to join a startup around that career development piece is ask the hiring manager or even the people that you'd be reporting into, how they train their reps, like how do they think about onboarding their reps, how do they support their reps, after the ramp period, how do they continue to do onboarding and build that culture. Because some of the big gaps that you'll see at a startup is because it's such a small team, like individual people have such an impact on the culture of the organization as a whole, how supported you feel and how invested in you feel. So really start, when you're interviewing for a job, like evaluating your boss as well, as far as like how he thinks about supporting you long term. So yeah, asking those questions is a good starting point. Number 2, career opportunities. So this one is a bit subjective because you can make this point about basically any bad company. And for me, I don't think I chose poorly as far as a startup is concerned. But when I was working at a public company, I used to get hit up by recruiters all the time asking to interview for roles. Now that I'm at a startup that doesn't really have like the same kind of name recognition, I get very few inbound requests for interviews. So typically if you're thinking about looking to move towards a startup, something I would look at is like what type of investors are invested in that company, what market they're selling into. Is it like a really core mission critical market? Some other things to look at were some of their financials, right? Is the business really growing or are they stagnant? Things like that will help determine if this startup is actually something that'll be good for your resume or if it's actually something that's going to pull back. Because when I have had interviews while working at the startup, one of the main things is I really have to sell my skill set, because the interviewer or the company I'm interviewing with doesn't believe I'm getting the enablement at the startup, which candidly they're kind of right, to be able to be successful in their role. And so I think you'll see that maybe the career kind of opportunities might be a little bit lower if you're at a startup. Now, on the flip side of this, if your startup does do really well, you're basically set for life, because now you can always point back to this great exit that you had at this awesome startup. Everyone who has success there will go to other successful companies, right? Like winners want to work with winners. And so you'll basically be set for life if the startup does succeed. But for a lot of early stage companies, there's no brand. So if you are trying to leave, it can be a little bit harder than you expect it to be. Number 3, and this is really specific to my role, but selling a product that doesn't fully have product market fit. So when I started selling at the startup I'm at today, we had product market fit for a very specific segment and a very specific use case in the market. But as my career has progressed through the company and my time there, we actually pivoted. We went up market to start selling to bigger companies, and we actually pivoted our value proposition to solve for a completely different problem than the initial problem we were solving for. And so I would hop on calls with prospects, find opportunities, where as we scoped out the opportunity, we only really solved for about 30 to 40% of what they were looking for. And the other 60% wasn't just like an edge case. These were like core requirements, and they weren't really even like edge requirements either, right? Like these were like pretty standard requirements, but the product just hadn't caught up there yet. So I feel like there was a lot of wasted time, a lot of wasted effort for us to pivot and start selling a product that doesn't have product market fit. Because a lot of times you're more selling the dream, or I don't want to use the word vaporware because that's not what we're doing, but you're selling the dream, not necessarily the actual product itself. So then you have to start doing some things like discounting heavily, start offering design partnerships, start offering things like, hey, like we'll do this custom development in this time frame in the legal contracts or the order form, things like that, just to get the deal done. And so it can add a lot more stress to the job itself because you're not really sure like what the growth opportunity looks like. Because let's say you get this customer to sign, and they get sold on the dream. In their contract, they could theoretically opt out of the contract if we don't meet deadlines. And then on the flip side, like if the product doesn't fully work for what they're looking for, even if we do build what they're looking for, then there's a really high chance that they might churn next year. And so there's really like kind of limiting the growth potential. So that's one of the big, I think, cons of working at a company is like the product market fit wasn't there. That's just from my experience. Maybe you go in at a startup and they just have perfect product market fit. If you are looking to sell at a company, something I would say is like, ask them how many customers are in production, why customers buy, who their biggest competitors are in the space. See if you can validate the category that they're selling into. This will give you some more confidence before joining a startup, is if you can really understand like, okay, why do people actually buy this? Like how many people are actually using it, day to day, like not just them, but their customers, right? So I think one of the cons is working at a company that doesn't have full product market fit. Awesome, y'all. So that's the video for today. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Like last time, like and subscribe. I'm gonna try to post videos weekly on this channel. And yeah, please connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm gonna start posting content there as well, but love to answer any questions you have. Send me a DM. Happy to help out however I can. Outside that, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.